Episode 19 Earth 11,000 BC Mars Colonization Vanguard on Earthlings. Earth 11,000 BC. 10:30 a.m. The Seashell spacecraft landed on the surface. The deck of the Seashell spacecraft. The large screen displayed a panoramic image of Earth and the subtitle, Earth 11,000 BC. The spacecraft slowly rose to a low altitude and came to the sky above the butterfly-shaped spacecraft on the other side of the valley. Cruising at a low speed, MUI Guangwu and the other three, along with the Martian bison, fox, and frog, were in the main turret, looking at the Martian butterfly-shaped spacecraft base below. At the gate of the base, the first group of humanoid robots, 2 people in a group, drove a crawler tractor towing a soil-turning machine, drove out of the base, and drove along the riverbank to the plain. The second group of humanoid robots, 2 people in a group, drove a wheel tractor towing a sewing machine. Following the first group of tractors, 2 Martians followed behind in a tractor, towing a carriage with some farm tools. Some humanoid robots lined up on dock behind the tractors. The tractors stopped near a field. The machinery towed by the crawler tractor turned up the soil in the field and broke it up. It was arranged into the shape of furrows. The seeding machinery towed by the wheel tractor dug holes on the ridges. Water, fertilized, put corn seeds in, and covered with soil. Several humanoid robots installed water pumps to pump river water into the reservoir. The farmland next to it was a cornfield planted by the primitive people on Earth. A large group of primitive people were in the fields, and the humanoid robots taught them with gestures and words. Some were teaching how to use simple stone tools to dig holes, drop seeds, and cover them with soil. Some were teaching how to use the giant turtle shell to get water from the river and water the place where the seeds were buried. Some humanoid robots are also teaching how to use tools made of sticks and sharp stones to dig canals, divert river water to the edge of the field, and release water to irrigate the land. Are the Martians cultivating and planting crops to prepare for subsequent immigrants to MUI Guangwu? No, the mechanical farming is just a demonstration. What the Martians do is to enlighten the Earthlings and teach those primitive people on Earth, who survive by hunting and eating wild fruits. The fox said, let them learn to open up wasteland, dig canals on plant land, develop agriculture, forestry, fishery, animal husbandry, and the handicrafts, so that they can improve their nutrition and hygiene, and the population will explode, the fox explained. In this way, when the Martians colonize the Earth will no longer be a wild planet. If they are taught hand in hand like this, it won't be long before they will come out of the forest, break away from primitive society, and become the overlord of the Earth. MUI Guangwu said, You are too naive. 6スタイル海沿いの劇まで続く公園があります。物語はここで起こります。Look at those gorillas. How similar they are to primitive people. Watching humans become the rulers of the Earth. Why don't they learn? Don't they want to evolve like humans and become the masters of the Earth? Indeed, they seem to have only the instinct to survive. Mikino Mitsuru said, There are many species on the Earth that are as smart as humans, but they will always be uncivilized animals. The fox said, The Creator gave humans a different gene, and this gene is civilization. The Creator also gave Martians a mission, and Martians are fulfilling this mission. Awaken this gene of humans, so that human civilization can awaken and explode. The spacecraft left the farmland and drifted slowly at low altitude. Looking down, there is an area surrounded by guardrails at the foot of a mountain, and the guardrails are divided into many areas. 2 humanoid robots carried a wild boar down the mountain in this area. The humanoid robot guarding the gate opened the gate, and they carried the wild boar in and put it in an isolation area. There is a wildlife park below. N.A. Songzu said, That's a demonstration site for domesticating wild animals into livestock, said the fox. Several robots were cutting grass and digging wild vegetables nearby, transporting the grass and wild vegetables over and feeding them to the wild boars in the fence. 2 humanoid robots from Mars brought several primitive people over and handed them over to a Martian. The Martian called to robots and asked them to take the primitive people to feed the animals. Outside the fence, The sheep were grazing with their heads down. Several sheepdogs were outside the sheep, either watching the sheep or vigilantly staring at the forest at the foot of the mountain not far away. A sheepdog saw a running hare and chased it. A robot chased it and drove the sheepdog back. The spacecraft left the pasture and drifted slowly along the foot of the mountain. In front, there were several Earthlings, some of which were still emitting green smoke. The spacecraft landed at the foot of the mountain. The Martian monkey ran over. Rest here. Those Earthlings seem to be burning something. Go and have a look. The group walked towards the Earthlings and saw from a distance that some humanoid robots and some primitive people were busy. In the Earthling in front of me, the robots around me are working with the primitive people to dig soil. Add some water, and mix it into mud. They use primitive molds to make the mud into shapes such as bowls and plates, and then put them into the earthen kiln to burn. Next to the earthen kiln, there are piles of fired pottery, bowls, plates, pots, basins, as well as some horses, dogs, and other animals. This is good. And Anyan Songzu said, if the Grand Duchy of Seychelles encounters a financial crisis, come here to Ship Shell. Selling antiques is all sky prices. Why not smuggle a few boxes back this time? Himiwa Iguanwu said, sell the antiques and buy an island. Build a big villa. Build a big swimming pool. And a hot spring. And Anyan Songzu said, and buy a sailboat. The Idaluji Guan held the sword in his left hand and the copper plate inlaid with TV stones in his right hand. He stretched the sword in front of the two people and knocked the sword with the copper plate, making a crisp sound. Wake up! Stop dreaming! She said, believe it or not, I will summon the space-time war police, and she will punish you to stay here forever and be slaves to humanoid robots. You didn't sell the antiques, so you became antique makers. It's not too bad. We are here, and we have a companion. And Anyan Songzu said, you will be miserable. Bison will go back to explore Mars and rebuild his big-headed Martian world, and you will be a captive there. That scene is unimaginable. She bullied me, and you didn't care about her. Biaidaluji Guang said to Muai Guangwu, I helped him conquer the primitive people here, and let him be the king here happily. And Anyan Songzu said, you let him listen to you and control me. What do you want? If he becomes the king, what will you? Biaidaluji Guang said, don't be a concubine instead of a queen. Forget, this is a matriarchal society. And Anyan Songzu said, at that time, I was the queen. You should ask Muai Guang what he does. But don't worry, I am such a kind queen. I will not ignore you. And Anyan Songzu said, I will find out your family tree and kill all your ancestors. You will disappear from the world and don't have to suffer as a slave to the big-headed Martians. The Idaluji Guang was so angry that he couldn't speak, and looked at Muai Guang with a look of help. If you bully her again, I will become the king of those barbarians and let them build a harem with branches and take you in. Muai Guang said to Anyan Songzu, let Biaidaluji Guang preside over the king's wedding ceremony tonight. Okay? Go ahead. Then Anyan Songzu said unconvinced. The first thing I will do when I take office as queen is to let those barbarians find more straw, build a concubine side hall, and carry Biaidaluji Guang in to be the princess. Please, stop arguing. I don't want the queen or the princess anymore. 緑地から海沿いのゲージまで続く公園があります。物語はここで起こります。Muai Guang said, I'm dreaming. Do you really take it seriously? And Anyan Songzu said, seeing Muai Guang blushing and anxious and unable to speak, Biaidaluji Guang secretly smiled and put the sword back into the scabbard. Not far ahead, it looked like a big mound of earth, with only a chimney coming out of the covered lois. Smoking. There were logs and burnt black charcoal piled next to it. Going forward, there is the last earthen stove. The fire inside is burning vigorously. The primitive people are adding charcoal to the stove, adding copper to the crucible, and the robot is pulling the bellows to blow air into the stove. A primitive man took down the crucible and cast it with the sand mold on the ground next to it. The red cup of water burst out with sparks and poured in from the trumpet-shaped pouring port, and green smoke came out from the pouring pour. The sand mold golden was opened, and the bronze dagger was taken out, although the sand and soil on it have not been removed unpolished. In this era when the spearheads are all smashed out of obsidian, such an exquisite bronze dagger stunned the three people. The Martian Bison and his group came over. What do you think after seeing so much today? Bison asked MUI Guangwu. Although the Martians are considering turning the Earth into a colony, at least at this time, the Martians' enlightenment of the Earthlings should be driven by the genes implanted by the Creator. MUI Guangwu said, this gene is the fire that spreads civilization in the interstellar universe. Yes, you see, here, the masters are the primitive people on Earth, and the ones who do the hard work are Martians and machine robots. Wild Bull said, if this is colonization, then there is also love that transcends the stars. MUI Guangwu said, but if the environment on Mars deteriorates later, and all Martians immigrate to Earth, then will the Martians still give these Earthlings the status of masters? Is that love still there? Who knows? Wild Bull said, immigrants naturally need land. They may go to develop wild lands. After all, the Earth is much larger than Mars. But it is also possible they can rob the Earthlings of their land. After all, there was a nuclear war among the Martians. Yes, said MUI Guangwu. War among the same kind led to destruction. Perhaps this is a defect in the civilization gene created by the Creator? Or is it a higher level curse that surpasses the Creator? It seems that we have no chance. This mystery can only be solved to you, said Bison. By the way, if the Earthlings of your time found a prey, Stone Age creatures on another planet, such as the moon, how would they treat them? To be honest, I don't know, said MUI Guangwu. Maybe they would enslave them as cattle and horses, or they would enlighten them like those Martians. As you know, Mars, the Earthlings have always been accompanied by wars. Everyone walked and talked back to the seashell spacecraft. The spacecraft left the ground silently, and soon returned to the sky above the base of the 5th Pioneer Team of the Mars-Earth Colonization, circling around the Martian Butterfly spacecraft. Main turret, Nenian Songsoan Biidaluji chatted casually at the base below, and saw that the butterfly-shaped spaceship was getting smaller and smaller, and the seashell rose to a high altitude. She saw that the main gun muzzle was moving horizontally, pointing at the Martian butterfly-shaped spaceship below. Not good or good enough, she shouted, jumped up and ran to the main gun. Bison was aiming at the butterfly-shaped spaceship on the ground with a scope, and Fox was doing something on the fire control panel. And Nenian Songzu and Biidaluji Guan each grabbed one of Fox's arms and threw Fox out. Bison noticed the movement, stood up and was about to pounce on Nenian Songzu and the others. But MUI Guangwu just arrived and kicked Bison out. Biidaluji Guan quickly pressed the manual priority and lock buttons on the fire control panel. Bison stood up, threw out the golden sword, and was about to operate the main gun. MUI Guangwu held the sword and blocked Bison in front. What are you going to do? UI Guangwu asked. It's none of your business. Get out of the way. Bison relied on his strength to charge at MUI Guangwu. MUI Guangwu squatted down and swept the Bison to the ground with a whirlwind kick. What's the matter? Tell me. Maybe we can discuss a solution. MUI Guangwu said. I want to blow up the butterfly-shaped spaceship, and no one can stop me. Bison said. You saw what they did. They didn't do anything wrong. MUI Guangwu said. Why blow up spaceship? It has nothing to do with what they did, said Bison. Because the colonization advance team progressed smoothly, giving the Martian government and Martians an illusion that if Mars is uninhabitable, they can just migrate to Earth, blow up the base and cut off their retreat, so that they know that Mars is their only home, and they can avoid mutual destruction in a nuclear war. MUI Guangwu said, think about it calmly. With the current technological and industrial strength, it is completely possible to start reclamation after coming here. The presence or absence of the advance team will not affect their decision-making at all. and it is useless for you to blow up the base. I have no choice. What you said is not what I consider. As long as there is a little hope, I will try it, said Bison. I am only responsible for the seeds of Martian civilization on a spaceship, and I only fight for the rebirth of Martian civilization. As long as I, MUI Guangwu, am here, I will not let you do whatever you want, said MUI Guangwu. No one can stop me. Wild Bull, if you want to die, get out of the way, Wild Bull said, raising his sword and rushing towards MUI Guangwu. MUI Guangwu and Enian Songzu both raised their swords to fight, and the three of them fought together. The Martian Fox and Frog each drew their swords and were about to rush over to join forces with Wild Bull. The Idol Jiguang waved his flower sword and killed them. The two had no power to resist and retreated repeatedly. The Martian monkey ran over with the sword, and the Idol Jiguang waved his sword to stop him. One person fought with three Martians. Seeing that Wild Bull and his men have fought for 30 rounds without a clear winner, the Idol Jiguang shouted the Idol Ichidao. He flipped and jumped up. A white sword light flashed, and the swords of the three Martians all slipped out of their hands, and 3 golden swords flew out. The Idol Jiguang landed on the ground with both hands, bounced up, flipped to the front of Wild Bull, and swung his sword upwards. Before Wild Bull understood what was happening, the golden sword in his hand also flew out. Whoever dares to reach out for the sword, I will kill him with one sword. No joke, the Idol Jiguang shouted, his eyes, like lightning, staring at the four Martians. His sword posture made it clear that the sword would stab at them in an instant. The bodies of the four Martians seemed to be fixed, and they froze in place. I was careless for a moment and let you in. I will listen to you, Wild Bull said. The Idol Jiguang put the sword back into the scabbard. MUI Guangwu picked up the golden sword and handed it to Wild Bull. Wild Bull said thank you and left with the three Martians. And Enian Songs rushed over and hugged the Idol Jiguang's legs and put me down quickly, the Idol Jiguang said. And Enian Songs put the Idol Jiguang down and said, you have vented my anger. I didn't beat this bison when you were not there that time. This bison, I only know that he is strong, but I don't know that his swordsmanship is so good. I am overwhelmed. And Enian Songs said to MUI Guangwu, you have cut his claws several times. Why didn't you kill him? If it weren't for the Idol Jiguang's action, the two of us would be in trouble today. Since they are fighting for survival, let them go, MUI Guangwu said. However, today we caught them by surprise. In fact, their strength is above ours, especially the monkey's original power. Everyone should be careful next time we fight.